propose. So we've grouped the questions to try and have a bit of themes to this. And the first couple of questions are about our award materials. So my first question is from Michelle, where we've had some feedback about the quality of badges for level 1 and 2, and if we are reviewing them.
Yes, so we are aware that there have been some quality issues with certain batches, which we've extensively researched and tried to fix, but to no real avail, to be honest with you. So we have done a review of our complete awards materials. Badges definitely will be changed. So we're about to change manufacturers and suppliers and improve the material of the badges. So the badges will be the same look and feel in terms of design, but the eco credentials will also increase, and we believe the quality will increase. So, but we will ask in the aim of not wasting things, that training providers try to use up any stock they currently have before moving on to the new badges when they're available. We'll be letting everybody know when they are going to be available in the shop, which will be within the next few months once we finalise contract agreements. So look out for notification of that. But yes, we are aware. We apologise for any inconvenience. We do try to make sure that we replace them as quickly as possible if we do get a complaint come in, and please do let us know if you're struggling with the quality of badges. But yeah, we're sorting it out.
Thanks, Michelle. And then the other question we had submitted in advance around award materials is a question on whether we will produce a joint certificate for level 1 and 2. An instructor who's commented that they spend quite a significant amount of time filling in both certificates, and they would prefer to be able to do that as a joint certificate.
Okay, so for combined level 1 and 2 courses, it's not actually a requirement to provide awards for both levels, just the highest level achieved. I mean, that's at the discretion of the training provider, but within the trust, that's not a requirement. For this reason, we're not introducing a combined certificate, but the digitisation project aims to reduce the time it will take to complete certificates, because the outcomes will be recorded via the new instructor app rather than on the reverse of the certificates. So literally all that will be required to fill in on a certificate will be the child's name. The rest of the information will be translated from the instructor app into a digital cycle skills report that will be sent digitally to the parent and carer. So it should reduce significantly the amount of time it takes to complete a certificate, but we will stick to level 1s and level 2s. We won't be having a combined one.
Thanks, Michelle. And that leads quite nicely on to a digitisation question. But if you do have any other further questions about award materials or anything else, please just pop those in the chat and we will come to them. But yes, the next question about digitisation is just looking for a little bit more information about the webinars which are coming up that hopefully you will have seen mentioned in the newsletters, asking what will happen in those webinars, if it's going to be an opportunity for industry, particularly instructors, to feedback, or if it's going to be more of an informative session. Emily, I think you're going to answer this one.
Great, thanks, Jess, and thanks for the question. So digitisation is a massive project and huge piece of work that's going on across the trust, and the webinars are a very welcome opportunity to do some further us being able to update on progress, but also to take some feedback from industry and community across the progress as we make it. We've already had a lot of good project groups already up and running and meeting. We've had instructors involved in being able to listen to their feedback in and across the digitisation piece, but this is a really, really critical piece for our future digitisation. It's absolutely critical for survival, for bikeability for the future. So we're really excited about what this will achieve for you. But it's also about making sure that there is not an excuse to defund bikeability in the future by giving much better, clearer information and access to the impacts of bikeability. So digitisation is critical for bikeability's future, but it definitely is an opportunity to both update on progress, but also to gather feedback from instructors and from industry. So I encourage you to attend.
Thank you, Emily. And yeah, we've just got a question about digitisation from Michelle about whether Clarity will work alongside Eventbrite. Michelle, I'm pretty sure you are part of the working group, so you are liaising with Simon directly about Eventbrite. We know industry use lots of different ways to bring people on. The work that Simon, who's leading the digitisation project, is doing is to try and marry all of that together. So he is working with various people from the industry in order to try and solve that. And Eventbrite is one of those systems that we are looking into. So if you have specific questions about a system that you may use as a training provider and you're not already in contact with Simon, I would encourage you to email him. It's simon@bikeabilitytrust.org so that he can look more specifically into your circumstances and how that will work with digitisation going forwards. So one more digitisation question.
Sorry, yes. Is someone hoovering in the background?
Oh, I'm getting building work done, so
okay, that'll be just checking. I could hear a strange noise, so just worth checking.
Yeah, I will try and sort my mic out, but there's lots of digging happening. So I have a question that is saying that not everybody is computer literate, and a comment that the RPL is still not sorted, and now we are moving on to digitalisation. Benjamin, I think you were going to answer this.
Yeah, sure, great. Thank you, Jess, and thank you to the person who asked the question. To take the RPL, I'll take the RPL bit and then move on to the digitisation bit. So I wasn't the comment or question wasn't particularly specific, so I'm not. It's hard to know what is meant by not sorted. I believe it is sorted. It was launched last January, and we've been keeping an eye on it and getting feedback all the way through. And it's been the revisions have been extremely well received. On sort of literacy, you can complete the RPL without even touching a computer through the assessment methods of the professional discussion, using a printed handbook, and obviously the observation. So that can be done again either through electronic means and completing the handbook on an online PDF version, or just through writing in a physical copy. Again, just a bit of a side note, I'd encourage everyone who is watching this and hasn't yet RPL'd to do so, and those who are managing teams of instructors to get your teams RPL'd ASAP before March next year, and reach out to the RDCs to organise that, and their contact details are available on the website. But to move on away from that little plug to digitisation. Digitisation and RPL are separate, and obviously we're really aware of the different degrees of digital literacy, and so that has been designed into the supporting documentation, and as part of the rollout there will be sort of robust guidance given, and it is as user friendly. The team are working really hard to make sure it is as user friendly as humanly possible. I've seen some early parts of that, and if I can do it, I think anyone can, because I'm not the most computer literate myself. But I don't know, Michelle, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I think you've summed that up brilliantly. So it is about making the instructor app particularly really simple. It's clicking and moving on clicking. So I mean, it should be quite straightforward, but we will be providing documentation and training material for instructors, and then the rest of the digitisation pretty much happens behind the scenes. So there are various technical, I'm not very technical, but there's various technical things going on under the bonnet that will make things happen, so it doesn't actually require people to be particularly digital literate. So I hope that kind of reassures people that you don't need to have a PhD in IT to be able to work out digitisation.
Great. I'm just going to pass over to my colleague Sally so that the annoying building work doesn't disturb anyone any further.
Thanks, Jessica. We're moving on to questions about instructor training next. So the first one is, what progress has the Trust made in developing an initial instructor training programme which incorporates guided observations of real-life delivery and support for real-life delivery and not just assessment? And Benjamin, I think this is another one for you.
Yes, sorry, I've got a few coming up, so I do apologise. You'll get bored of my voice. But I think I would, again, challenge the question a little bit, because currently it's recommended that new instructors undergo 72 hours of on-the-job co-delivery. Again, once they're provisional, you then work alongside a qualified instructor, which again is doing exactly that. In general, level 2 awards are not are simulated, so they're sort of taught online classroom or online, and then you have simulated assessments on the course. That is how nearly every level 2 award works. The logistics of getting, let's say, real trainees, in our case it would be riders, but real trainees on any level 2 courses, again, very, very difficult. But again, I'd just say that new people wanting to become instructors can and should be encouraged to observe training beforehand, before taking part, so they know exactly what they're getting themselves in for. They attend their course, and then there's an additional set of hours to make up what's called the total qualification time for the level 2 course, which is, again, mentoring, co-delivery, putting that in their personal development plan, and actually this is more than any other level 2 that I'm aware of. So I think we do it very well within the current version of the level 2 course. As most of you are aware, and those who aren't, it's a good place to flag, with that is being reviewed, and that will be tweaked, but there were some on-course delivery post-course will be required, and recording that will be required as well. So we're committed to making sure that instructors have a really good sort of entry into bikeability or cycle training and feel supported doing so.
Thank you, Benjamin. The next one, another instructor question. It is my understanding that PCAs for instructors converting to First for Sport are now being undertaken by IQA leads, and can they know the rationale for this? And again,
sorry, I can take that and I'll answer the whole question as well. So, for the current recognised prior learning, we have created a way that registered IQA leads for training providers can provide some evidence. Now, it's important to know that the evidence that's supplied is not the only piece of evidence that sits against the particular assessment criteria or part of the assessment criteria in the level 2 award. For that individual, there's a couple of pieces that are required, and that comes through, again, the professional discussion, the CPD day, and the handbook and the post-course assessment. So it all builds, all this evidence builds together to give the tutor assessor, the overall tutor assessor, enough information for their formative during the formative assessment to make an endpoint summative assessment on that individual. So again, it's not the only piece of evidence that's required, and we do have a fairly robust set of requirements for IQA leads to do this. They need to attend training. They need to evidence that they are indeed IQA leads, and they need to adhere to a set of principles, and they need to be EQA'd themselves. And there's actually sort of 3 levels of quality assurance for this step. So one is the RDC IQA, so 25% of all learner assessment needs to be checked by the RDC's internal quality assurer. RDCs themselves are subject to external quality assurance, and for this particular part as well, we are using our own EQA team to observe some of these too. So we are sort of checking them as robustly as we can, and every a tutor assessor does have a final sign off on the observation as well. So that they will read through, they'll ask questions of the IQA training provider, IQA lead who took part in, who conducted the assessment, to ensure that it matches the view of the individual they met through professional discussion and through the CPD day. So I hope that answers the question. Sorry for all the acronyms. I should have. Well, maybe we could, or when we send this out, we have a list of a little glossary for EQA, IQA, RDCs, L2A, ICTs, etc., etc. So if you love acronyms, you'll get on very well with us in the development team.
Excellent. So I've got another acronym for you next. And this is another Benjamin question. Why doesn't Bikeability recommend the well-established IPSGA? Information position, speed, gear, acceleration, riding system?
Great. So that's pronounced IPSGA. So that is a generally an advanced motorcycle technique, and there's a few good reasons why we haven't adopted that in no particular order. So one, a cycle is a lot slower than a motorcycle and a car. So speed and gear and control is covered very much in level 1, and a rider assist there, and then moved on to level 2. I would also argue that acceleration for a cycle is far less important. We don't want to be telling, because that very much depends on how fast you pedal, essentially, and I think that just is not helpful thing to be telling people as they come out of a junction, just pedal faster. Well, I might not be able to do that. Also, the 4 core functions of observation, priorities, position, and communication, we believe collectively, again with the Cycle Training Standards Board, are sort of the best form of introduction to the road for the first time, particularly when you're talking about young people who have not used the roads at all. We want to keep it, again, really simple and to the fundamental things, and IPSGA I don't think covers the elements, or a couple of those elements, as well as we want them to for that introduction. So hopefully that answers that question.
Perfect. And then we've just got one more for you, Benjamin. Can you tell me what information on riders you need recorded by instructors, and a suggestion that a template designed by the Trust would be helpful?
Great. So so obviously you have for your kind of summative endpoint assessment, you have your certificates, which will become digital certificates in the digitization project. On the back, you record, as instructors, you record what they've achieved against the national standard assessment criteria. Instructors should be recording or using tracking sheets for their to record during the course, and there are examples of those that we have created, but obviously training providers are more than welcome to use those themselves as well. I think the question as well spoke about sort of that pass or fail, and that the individual was perhaps concerned that somebody in a different position was after those pass and fail figures. Now, as we all know, Bikeability is for many good reasons a attendance rather than pass fail course, but again, to think forward towards the digitization bit, you as instructors will be, again, providing assessment against a set of national standard assessment criteria, and that will be fed to the rider, their parent, and the training provider and grant recipient will be able to see that as well. So if someone wants to drill down into sort of progression through a course, they will be. Again, think of it as somebody being able to sort of read the back of all of your current certificates. Again, that's not possible at the moment because it goes off to the individual, but that information will again go to the individual but be retained, so that we can do some really helpful analysis into rider progression. We can do that, and training providers can do that as well. And Michelle, I don't know if you wanted to add anything into that, but that's how I would answer that question.
No, you've answered it fine. Thank you, Benjamin.
Cool, thank you. And I think I'm being quiet for a little while. You'll all be very glad to know.
We've had a question come in about Digi from Jane, which is basically how much data will the app use, and will there be an impact on instructor phone bills? Michelle, I don't know if that's one you want to answer.
Yeah, it's a web browser based. It's not actually an app. It's not something you would sort of download from a Play Store or anything like that. So I think I just need to make that clear. And as a result of that, you don't actually need a constant internet access. It's something that you can do offline and go back online at a later stage, because we've thought about things like rural areas and internet access as part of the project. So we understand that not everyone always has connectivity. So that's all been built in. And actually the data is just a text file, so it's really, really minimal. So there isn't any sort of big data transfer at all going on with that app, and it won't affect anybody's phone bills or anything like that.
Thanks, Michelle. So we're moving on to the grants and funding series of questions. The first one I think is for Emily. Are there any plans to review the current level of payment per place delivered? And the current rate of inflation has eroded the benefits of the £10 per place increase.
Great, thanks for the question. So it's been, the Trust has recommended to Active Travel England and Department for Transport as part of the negotiations for 2023 to 2025 funding that an inflationary approach increase to the core modules is something that we've recommended to them. Whether or not they are able to accept that, we are still negotiating with ministers and with department officials on what the total funding package and envelope looks like. But that was our lobbying position from the outset, is that we recognised and understood that cost of living, inflationary pressures, and particularly pressures on local highways authorities who do have to find a contribution to bikeability training, because this doesn't cover, our grant per head does not cover the whole amount. There is still a contribution made by local highways authorities, and that's why we've made that recommendation. We are expecting and hoping to be able to communicate all decisions on future grant funding imminently, and I am using that language rather than giving a specific date, because this is subject to political process currently, but we expect imminent to be, I would hope, before recess dates, before the summer period, but we can't give you that guarantee at the moment because it's a political decision.
Okay, thank you, Emily. And the next one, how do you balance the push for a more professional coaching approach to bikeability and the low pay rates?
Yeah, so I thought this was a really interesting question, so thank you for asking it. I think that the work that we are doing at the Trust on making the level 2, and Benjamin and the team and Megan and the team are doing, and Pat through the cycle training delivery guide. So there's a couple of parts to this answer to Mifa's question. Firstly, we're doing an awful lot more work to support instructors to be able to develop their practice. So the new cycle training delivery guide, when that comes out in the autumn, the changes that we're making to the level 2 qualification, things like the UK coaching subscriptions that we've given out to new instructors and existing instructors are about supporting instructors to get access to the right information to develop your own practice and to feel more confident in the workspace to deliver. The second part of the question is about pay and conditions. This is not for the Trust. We do not employ instructors directly. So it is a negotiation between local authorities, their training providers, whether they do in-house or outsource, to look at pay and conditions as part of that contracting arrangement. Now, what we suggested at the Trust is to look at benchmarking for other existing sporting coaching qualification roles, and we do that benchmarking ourselves. And the pay and conditions, from what we can see from average pay levels, are in line with other level 2 qualifications. So we definitely want professional instructors coaching. We've got the right qualification, but we're wanting to do more to support instructors to develop their own practice. But pay and conditions is a matter for your employer.
Thank you, Emily. And the next one is for Sue, and it is, why has the Trust changed the terms of the grant for the quarterly claims to such tight timescales? The grant conditions are unreasonable for recipients who do not have dedicated staff to the role of bikeability.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Yes, so the grant conditions were actually changed last year, so this is the second year of this policy. The reasons for changing were twofold, really. Firstly, we're anxious to get cash to our grant recipients as timely as possible. This is really to enable where grant recipients are paying perhaps third parties to do their delivery, and obviously they're paying cash out to that delivery to take place. So we're trying to match the income that we provide to grant recipients with their own expenditure, be it salaries or third party. The second reason really was that we are trying to record up-to-date information and data that we can then pass on to Active Travel England regarding what delivery has taken place up to date at any point during the year. So by requiring quarterly reporting and claims via grant recipients, we then pass that information on to Active Travel, and it gives them a better picture of how their funds are being spent. We do appreciate that obviously it is quite a tight timetable for grant recipients to get the information to us so that we can play within a month. Most of our grant recipients have been able to do this process and have been successful in making claims. Those that are finding it difficult have perhaps found workarounds, and one of the workarounds that some people are doing is they are putting in a claim during the third month, perhaps relating to the first 2 months, so that they've already dealt with the first 2 months of the quarter. And then when it comes to the end of the quarter, they've only got the last month to deal with, which is a simpler and quicker process for them because there's less delivery to load and there's less work to do. So it's enabling them to get the whole of the quarter in on time, be it in 2 smaller claims. And that in that method, they're sort of working round the deadline. Hopefully that's helpful, but if you've still got problems and you want to talk to us about it, please talk to the grants team and we'll see if we can come up with a solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. That's the end of the questions on grants and funding. If you've got anything else, please pop it in the Q&A at the bottom. So we're moving on to the other section, which is a bit of a mixed bag of different topics. And the first one is about Ask the Trust. So who attends Ask the Trust sessions and how do you decide when to run them? So, you know, what mix of people do we get? Caroline, I think that's a new question.
Thanks, Sally. So yeah, we get a mix at each of these. So we get some grant recipients, some training providers, and some instructors. We get usually around 10-12 people that attend, which is quite low. However, we record them and we do get a lot of views. So we get around 200 views of the webinar on our YouTube channel afterwards. So there is obviously people interested in it. It is quite a difficult balance. We have tried doing them at different days of the week, different times in the day, and we've done evening ones as well. And there is no clear difference between who attends and how many people attend. It's just a case of some people can come at some times and some can't. And we're never going to please everyone, but we will continue with all our webinars and things, try and find the right times and do different timed sessions to include as many people as possible. And then, of course, we will continue to record what we can so that you can watch it at a time that's more suitable for you. I think the only other thing to say as well is that we have also done it in and out of term time, because that was a suggestion that actually we should try them out of term time, and we found that more people were on holiday then, but not much difference in numbers attending. So we will continue to try and reach as many people as we can through the channels we've got.
Lovely, thank you, Caroline. The next question is about the TRL project. So can you explain the purpose and goals of the TRL project? What is the purpose of the data which this project aims to collect, and how much impact will this have on industry workloads? Emily, I think you're going to pick this one up.
Thanks, Sally. I'm really excited about what we're doing with the monitoring and evaluation product, and there will definitely be further communications giving you lots more information about exactly what's happening coming up over the coming months. So in terms of the question started with the kind of terms of reference, so actually what's interesting here is that since 2016, this has been part of grant recipients' terms and conditions to engage in a national monitoring and evaluation piece of work to ensure that data and information about the outcomes of bikeability was reported to the Bikeability Trust. We've just never put in place the national monitoring and evaluation system, so now we are putting that in place, but the expectation has been part of this since 2016, so we're a long way now from putting it in place, which is great. We went out to tender and we appointed TRL, who are Transport Research Laboratories, who've worked with us before on the widening participation work. That was a full tender process, that was a scored tender process. And then we've had a working group with the Bikeability Trust, with Active Travel England, consultation with Sheffield Hallam University, and I'll explain why in a second, and then TRL. That piece of work was to develop a theory of change for the Bikeability programme, which and then a set of standard monitoring and evaluation tools which were able to show immediate outcomes, so the immediate outcomes of bikeability, and then the longer term ambitions and vision for what bikeability will have a longer term impact on. The reason that Sheffield Hallam and ATE are so significantly involved in this, Active Travel England, is because there is a wider piece of work going on across the whole of Department for Transport and ATE, which feeds into all of the National Travel Survey and all of the other wider data that they need to collect in order to secure future funding. So we become a really good key input into the wider picture of how is government performing against active travel. In the past, all we've been able to say is the numbers of children trained. We've not been able to say anything else. That is not good enough for a circa 25-30 million pound investment for Treasury to be making in the future. This needs to really demonstrate, what do children learn on the programme? Are they satisfied with what they get? How confident are they to cycle on the roads? Are parents confident to cycle on the roads, allow them to cycle on the roads? What's their attitudes towards cycling? All of those tools will give an awful lot more information in order to justify future funding. So it's absolutely critical for the future of bikeability. This will give us excellent data to tell the story about the impact of bikeability more effectively. You will have all heard me say this various different times at conferences. At the moment, I sit in ministerial meetings, talk to ministers, and they say, why can't you tell me how many children are doing bikeability today? Because we don't have the right systems. Why can't we've given 15 years of investment now into bikeability, record funding levels, but cycling to school has stayed static at 2%. So essentially, bikeability hasn't delivered an impact on cycle to school rates. We need to measure the right things, and that's what the tool is doing to enable us to tell the story much more effectively to secure the future and that future investment. And that's what the monitoring and evaluation tools will do. So I don't want to go into all the ins and outs of all the questions. The surveys are really easy. I've seen the hands up survey. To be honest with you, I mean, I do visits at least twice a week at the moment. I go out. Instructors are doing this anyway on the playground. They're just not doing it in a structured way and then reporting this back to the trust. So it's not going to add huge bureaucratic burden to training providers and instructors. We're trying to do this as minimally as possible, but in means we'll be able to actually get much better information from parents and carers about what children go on to do post bikeability training, and that's so critical to securing our future. I'm no longer, well, I am still thinking about 23 to 25, but my head is absolutely in 25 beyond, and this is how we get there. This is how we make sure that we know we're going to get you a settlement to 2025, but we need a much better story to tell if we want to survive beyond 2025.
Fantastic, thank you, Emily. The next one is another one for you. Do you have any response to the strike action currently taking place in London?
So London situation has been incredibly difficult for a very long period of time. So from 2020, particularly when first COVID hit, there was a long and protracted negotiation between central government and Transport for London on a funding settlement for how cycle training is funded in London. That has now concluded. TfL have a funding settlement. It is a record funding settlement for cycle training in the capital, but the matter of funding is between London boroughs and their employers. We at the Trust would absolutely urge London boroughs, the union, instructors and individual cycle training employers to get around the table and to get good discussions about funding settlement for London, given they've got an increased amount of funding in London, because it's really, really critical we get cycle training in London happening again, so that children are able to access cycle training, and cycle training instructors work with their employers on rates of pay and terms and conditions.
Sorry, brilliant, thank you, Emily. Michelle's asked a little quick question about the TRL. We took part in the TRL survey pilot, and we did find it really simple and effective, apart from the couple of tweaks needed to the system. So sorry, more of a comment than a question, but that's really good feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That's made my day.
We've also had one from Benoit about the conference. Would you consider changing the date for next year, as early March is a very busy time for local authorities? So January or February would be better. Michelle, is this one you can pick up?
Well, we've had a real struggle in finding a venue within our budgets, if I'm honest with you. So we've actually literally just agreed that it would be the 6th of March. So we're just organising contracts at the moment, but we'll certainly take that comment on board for future dates. But for next year, it will be March still.
Right, and we're just moving on to our final question. So if you've got anything else to add, stick it into the Q&A now. And this is it possible that questions asked via Contact Us or in the Instructor Face group could be shared more widely? As I think it would be helpful if some of these questions and answers were shared to all the instructors who are monthly updates. And that's another one for you, Michelle.
We thought this was a great idea, so thank you to the instructor that proposed it, and we're absolutely going to do that. So I'm working with my team to formulate a process, because it does really help to share that sort of a wider knowledge. So yeah, we'll do that. Watch this space.
I don't think there's any more Q&As, any more questions to come in. So if anyone's got anything they want to ask, please.
Yeah, it's your last chance, everyone, to get them into Q&As. If there's nothing, then we will all thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you so much for taking. Oh, one's come in. There you go, Sally.
When are the digitisation webinars?
I can answer that. Well, Sally, you're organising them at the moment, aren't you? We're just finalising those dates at the moment, and they will be shared either in the monthly newsletter or as their own dedicated email. Once those are confirmed, we'll be sending those out.
Lovely. Emily, I don't know if you've got any final.
Yeah, I think it's always a pleasure to hear directly from people. I always value one-on-one conversations, small group conversations, you know, those people who choose to take the time to engage in this. You know, really grateful that you do that, whether or not you're listening back to this afterwards and then it prompts questions and feedback to us. That's really important. Or you're able to kind of come on the day and attend. It's really critical we keep having these conversations. You know, I feel like I'm a bit of a traveling show at the moment, that or feel like I'm always constantly on trains talking to people, getting out there, because there is no substitute for having a good conversation about what is happening out there in delivery, so that we can get the right terms and conditions and the right things to be able to support an industry. So we really value your time, your expertise, and having this regular dialogue with everyone in industry. We don't always have all of the answers at the Trust. That's why we have lots of working groups, lots of projects going on, and that's why we make lots of requests of you, because you've got expertise and skill to be able to add into this space. So it's a big thank you to everyone who engages directly with us and helps us to kind of get these big pieces off the line. You know, I've been doing a lot of talking with people recently, and I sent out a communication to grant recipients and to training providers to explain why some of the decisions have been so vastly delayed. And we're not able to get everything in clarity for you yet across the line about 23 to 25. We are in an unprecedented political time. It feels like we've been in that unprecedented political time for an awfully long period of time. I'm frustrated, and I'm happy to say I'm frustrated. I tell ATE and DFT I'm very frustrated for you and with you about not being able to give the clarity that we all know that we need in order to retain instructors to deliver every child. And we're now looking at a very short timescale for March 2025 to be able to deliver 80% of children across every area of the country with a level 2 course. That is a really short window that we're going to need to work together to meet that planning assumption, so ministers can stand up and say that they've delivered that manifesto commitment. So we're frustrated that this has not been the 3 years that we originally suggested and put in planning assumptions on. We're now looking at kind of an 18-month long period. We really urge you to get on board and to help us to work this through, but to be honest with us and have those conversations about how we can get this over the line. We know you're committed, we know you're here and you're working in the industry because you absolutely love to see children travelling actively and giving them the skills, the fun and the independence and the confidence to cycle. We can get there if we work all together. So it's just a big thank you for everything you're doing, a big thank you for taking the time, and our doors are open, listening, engaging, and we're just really grateful for everything that you do.
Perfect, thank you, Emily. So yeah, hope you have a lovely rest of the days, and if anything else you would like to ask after this session, please get in touch. Our door's always open, and this recording will be available for the rest of the industry shortly. So we'll leave it at that for now.
Thanks everyone, bye.
Bye-bye.